My name is Allon Moritz. I'm from Switzerland. I'm doing Joomla extension since 2007. I'm a member of the Joomla 4 working group, team leader of the new media manager, and was this year the first time a Google Summer of Code mentor. Today I'm going to show you what are the changes for extension developers, how they need or can change their extension for Joomla 4. First, I will give a short introduction into namespaces, then the changes in the MVC layer, what else needs to be done for a component to get ready for Joomla 4, modules, plugins, what's they're important, and the big topic, backwards compatibility. And then afterwards, I will do a live migration of weblinks. To migrate it to Joomla 4. Weblinks is a core maintained extension, which was till a couple of releases ago in the core, and we decoupled it, and it's still maintained in his own repository. And for sure at the end, the question round. If you have questions during the session, don't hesitate to ask. It should be more of an interactive workshop than just like me talking all the time. First question is, who is extension developer in this room? Who did already extensions for Joomla 2.5? Had you guys two different code bases for Joomla 2.5 and 3? You had? So there's like most of them could do that, and that's also the target for Joomla 3 and 4. Good, namespaces. It's basically something which exists in most object-oriented programming languages, that you kind of like can organize your classes. And since Joomla 3, since PHP 5.3, it's natively supported. Before you had to do some other crazy things, like for example, Zend did it with underscore. Every underscore in the class name was a folder, and it automatically like made the lookup where the files are. And since PHP 5.3, which was released in, if I'm not wrong, in 2009, they introduced namespaces to kind of organize your classes in a better way. It allows you that you can introduce then your own class loader, or nowadays Composer is one of the most famous class loader, which does all the hard work for you. But basically, target is that you don't need any includes or requires anymore in your PHP code. It becomes cleaner. You don't have to care anymore about files where they live, or when you move a file that you need all to change your requires. All of that is gone. For example, class names become much more clear. For example, in Joomla 3 we have this class name content model articles. It basically tells the Joomla class loader, or basically it's not even the Joomla class loader, but it's the model itself. It tells them to load the class in the content component in the model folder with the name articles. This was leading to a situation that we can't have the same class for the front end and the back end. This changed now. We have a common pattern of namespace where how you should then define your class names. We'll see that later. And this allows then really to organize your classes in a much better way. JLoader itself, it's the Joomla class loader. It can handle namespaces automatically for the extensions, even for your third-party extensions, not only Joomla extensions. And as I said already, it allows us to distinguish between front-end and back-end classes, so we can have an articles models for the front-end and an articles models for the back-end. In 3.8, we migrated already the libraries. So what was in libraries Joomla and library CMS, we migrated that to namespaces. These classes can be found in the in library source. It's for 3.8 we published or announced that with this Joomla 4 compatibility layer. I'm talking afterwards more about that, but that's the first step to move the whole Joomla core to namespaces. Here you can see a typical class in Joomla 4. You have here on the top the namespace declaration, and then a much cleaner class name, which actually tells you what the class is, and not just like, which is a strange construct of folder names and component names and stuff like that. Good. MVC layer. We had in Joomla 3, we have this legacy MVC layer. No new developer understands why it's called legacy. This is used in almost any Joomla extension. We, in Joomla 4, we decided to make that the default MVC layer. Because of that, we deprecated, or we will deprecate the new MVC layer. We removed FOV2, so there should be only one way for extension developers to create your Joomla extensions, or especially MVC layer is more connected to the component. It should become then much more cleaner documentation, because FOV2 new MVC layer is almost not documented. So it's kind of like we can then focus our documentation on one MVC layer. Stuff like get instance will become deprecated. It's more than like to use the models directly. This can also change. Perhaps we are going to introduce a service layer to get models from, but that's still in discussion where we need to decide what we want to do there exactly. We have a new MVC interface to create the model out of it. We'll see then later how that's going to be used. As I already said, we have this this legacy layer. I guess everybody knows JController legacy or JModel legacy. These are now namespaced. They have new class names. But the old class names, they still exist, they still work. So you can still write in your code JController legacy. What will not work anymore is in your IDE that's code assist, like autocompletion. But basically, all the classes you already know from Joomla 3 will be there in Joomla 4, just with a different class name. We made that for controller, for the models, for the views, for table, for plugins, for almost everything. We touched quite a lot of files during the development of the compatibility layer. Good. Component namespacing. As you see, can you see it in the back? A component will now have a slightly different folder structure. Most of you are known then. In a Joomla 3 component, we had this controllers folder with an S, lowercase. Now it's uppercase. It's standard for namespacing that the first, at least the first character needs to be uppercase. So controller, model, table, it's not more plural, it's singular, and it's they have an uppercase name. It's a standard for the class loader to auto-detect the files, to know, okay, when a class has a namespace with model, it's found in the model folder of the component. Yeah, Peter?
Why are the helpers and the TMPL class with the lowercase? Why not make it also uppercase?
I come to that later. The question was, why is temple and helpers not uppercase? Temple is, what we try to do is we try to disconnect or like not combining non-PHP class files with other files. So that's why we distinguish, for example, temple file, that's just layout files, it's like Twig, we are using plain PHP, but it's not class files, it's not something which is loaded by the class loader. Helpers is something special. It's there because mostly the helpers are loaded in some kind of magic auto-loading stuff, checking if a function is there. And we kind of want to get rid of it, or basically we don't have, at the moment, a concept for it. What we are going to do, because with the current more service-oriented architecture, it's like this magically class name compiling doesn't fit anymore into that architecture. As I said, the uppercase folder there are for classes, the lowercase folder are for other stuff. Even like config files or template files. Yeah, sir?
When writing or considering an upgrade of the component from 3 to 4, suddenly there's going to be needing to rename some folders, delete some old folders, and create some new folders and stuff like that. Because of this renaming, has that been taken into consideration, especially deleting folders? Sometimes that can be a little bit of a permission problem.
No, not till yet. Yeah, basically, if your extension is using just the new ones and the old ones still exist, they are there but are not used. So kind of, yeah, but the cleanup, how the core does when it's getting upgraded, for that we don't really have till now a plan, or not a plan, but we didn't implement that to delete files. Then we have a dispatcher in Joomla 4. It's the only class in your component which is not namespaced. And basically we'll see that then later on it's a lot of kind of monkey work. Every root class, like JFactory or this JController legacy, they're becoming a backslash in front, or also the root classes like the exceptions or simple XML, stuff like that. There's another change for the controller and the model. They need an additional parameter in the constructor, like getting an MVC factory interface to basically load the tables, views, models. We distinguish between front end and back end. So there is a namespace part for the extension for the front end, another one for the back end. In Joomla 4, we have the standard that the first part of your namespace is the vendor name. Then the type of extension, then the extension name, and where it is, if it's on site or administrator. So for example, like the vendor for Joomla extensions is Joomla, then you have component, content, site, and then like model articles. What we didn't do till now is even the helpers. For that, we have different concepts of them, but yeah, till now we didn't decide really what to do with them. And also JHTML, it's now more service oriented. It has a kind of service registry, and there we don't really have also concept how to automatically register them, because till now the whole concept needs manual registration. But that's definitely stuff we are going to fix till the final release of Joomla 4. We are now in alpha phase. There is a lot of stuff which can change and which will change till we enter beta, and that's something we are definitely going to fix. As I said, we had in Joomla 3, we had the single entry file, content.php, which basically on the back end does this ACL check and then makes jcontroller legacy get instance and then execute on the object and this stuff. And in Joomla 4 you can have your dispatcher class, which basically extends the core dispatcher, and this is doing all the hard work for you. It's loading the languages, makes the ACL checks, loads the controller, executes the controller, creates the MVC factory. All of that, you basically just need one class where you define what is your namespace you are going to use, and the rest is just hidden. For sure you can override. The dispatcher is automatically instantiated and executed. We don't have that single entry file anymore. It's all in a class. We inject the application into that, so it should then help to basically build easier your environment on a long term. Yeah, we'll see that then afterwards, at the end of the day, it's really just like a class which extends the core dispatcher and defines the namespace. There is another change for forms. We had in forms, we had this attribute add include path or something like that. I'm not sure anymore. And as we are working now with namespaces, we have this additional attribute add field prefix, where you can define additional namespaces where it should look for fields. So when you have a special field, you need to register that, or like giving the path, it automatically was reading the file, compiling the class somehow, and this is now done through namespaces, where it basically knows then how to work with the namespace of the field. Like that, these forms are then really, they can be used in any model or other component. Their a JForm instance can build itself out of such a model declaration then out of the box. It allows the extension developer also to use the same forms for Joomla 3 and Joomla 4, because when, for example, when you want to use the category fields, in Joomla 4 you need add field prefix, in Joomla 3 you need add field path, so kind of like you can then use the same form on both systems. We'll explain that later in why it is important, because of backwards compatibility. The modules itself, there was not much big changes. You still have this single entry file where you load the layout files, you load the helper, you execute the layout file, and then you're done. There's not much namespacing there. There are namespaces for helper classes or event classes or whatever you need if you need additional classes in your module. There is also support for that in JLoader. So when you want to load your own helper class, for example, it needs to be in a certain namespace, and JLoader will find that out of the box. If you want to have a look, all the core modules are namespaced, front end and back end. You will see mostly it's like it was just reducing the require of the file and then just loading the class. It makes everything much more simple and clear for extension developers. Plugin the same, classes stay the same, classes are loaded the same. There is a plugin namespace, again the vendor, then the type plugin, then the folder or the group it belongs to, and the plugin name and all file below that. We paid special attention to backwards compatibility. It was, we really wanted to go into the direction that every Joomla 3 extension should work out of the box on Joomla 4. We will also backport some of the features from Joomla 4 into Joomla 3.9, that you even will be able to run your Joomla 4 extension in Joomla 3.9. There will definitely be limitations on some features, but we'll make it an easy bridge for all of them. Because of that, we did some class mapping. For example, if you're going to use JForm in your extension, it's now in the class Joomla CMS form. We have a big class map file, which maps basically PHP as this construct of class alias to exactly fulfill that need that you can have an old class name and say this class maps now to the new class. So you kind of like avoid a lot of backwards compatibility issues. We also added most of the features. We didn't replace or remove code. What we're going to do is to remove old deprecated code. It's like pull requests are still open, but we're planning to remove stuff like J exception or J error. It's really like there are deprecated sites Joomla 1.7, and we have plans to remove that stuff. Also, there are all these wrapper classes which wrap static helper code. We're all going to remove that. The overall goal is to change to a more service-oriented architecture by using interfaces, having the I container which has the services, and you can basically overload the services. Like that, we want to go into the direction that overloading classes should not be needed anymore. It's still possible, but it should really be avoided. If there is a need to overload a class, it's better to create a service and then we can deal with the services. A big change was the event system. That changed completely. Here's the guy who did that. Basically, classes like J-Event Dispatcher and this kind of stuff got removed. If you want to have it or basically not just get removed, it get replaced by the core framework package. There is the signature of events is different, but to still work the same way as we are used to, just with the name and the arguments, there is a function on the application to trigger the event. And basically, as I tested DP calendar with Joomla 4, the only thing I had to do was just a search replace, like J-Event, event dispatcher, get instance, replacing with J-Factor, get application trigger event. And then you're safe. Good. The main part of this session today will be to migrate Weblinks. Weblinks, as I said already, it's a core supported Joomla extension. Basically what it does, the people who know Joomla for a couple of years, it manages your weblinks. You can have on the front end, you can have a list of weblinks, in the back end create these weblinks. This was decoupled, I guess, in Joomla 3.4 or 3.3, I'm not sure anymore, but it's quite a couple of releases ago where it got removed from the core. It got put into its own GitHub repository where its development is moving on there. I had to do a small pull request, I will show that then later, to make weblinks work in Joomla 4 with the Joomla 3 code base. It was just like removing even this like class name and something with observers, like some plugin stuff which we changed. But it was for us, it was a good showcase that Joomla 3 standard Joomla 3 extension is working on Joomla 4 when you're removing the deprecated code from your component. So the first thing we're gonna do is we create a dispatcher, and the controller, the standard controller, I guess everybody of you who created the component, there is a component name.php file and the controller.php file, which basically loads all the views when no task is given. So So what we have here is that's the old structure. Can you see it in the back?
No.
How can I zoom? I'm pretty new to PHP Storm, so.
Control plus probably.
That's in not. Yeah, basically I activate.
View and last. In the menu. View and the last.
I'm already in presentation mode. That's the.
That's wasn't. Okay.
Use VS Code, please.
Yeah, that usually works.
Can you have maybe a screen resolution? A smaller screen resolution?
Yeah, that's true.
That could kill video.
Can I?
Use your mouse.
Something.
Windows Zoom.
Should try this one. Yeah, I'm not.
Just go to configuration and increase the font size. Yeah. For the text editor to 20 pixels or something like that.
Oh my god. Where is that in settings?
Preferences, yeah.
Font.
A bit more.
Still didn't change, huh?
So it's Joomla 4 and a tutorial on how to use PHP Storm.
It's like I was on Eclipse till even like beginning of the year, and when you change your ID, it's like learning.
Still be not refreshed.
Reboot is always.
We need some theme from Jeopardy music.
Oh my god. I don't even know.
There's a presentation mode available in PHP Storm. Yeah, easy. This is the presentation mode.
Ah, yeah, that's the presentation mode.
Everyone gather around.
Yeah.
Huddle.
Huh?
Huddle.
So, anyway, what we do from com content, we copy the dispatcher.
Allon. Open
Yeah.
it in GitHub.
What?
Open it in GitHub. Then you can see within the browser.
Yeah, but I don't have it in GitHub. I do a live.
Replay. Oh, Weblinks, right.
Push it to production. Yeah, make a pull request allergic. Come on.
Joomla 4 new feature, Weblinks added back to core.
So basically, what I did, I created the dispatcher with, gave it the name Weblinks and defined the namespace of it. And now, probably need to Yeah, it works. Now when we load Weblinks, to crash. Tells us that the display controller is not found. So what you have to do is to create a folder. Controller. Move the controller there. Display control and give it the namespace. Component, Weblinks, administrator, and then moving the classes, like that's now the base controller class. And here in default we are using JText became text, and JRoute becomes route. And now we go back. Need to change the file name. Namespace, Joomla component, Weblinks administrator. Oh, yeah. So basically I gave it now the namespace, and all of that, it knows that this is, you found it?
Go to the settings. Editor, general. Enable the second thing, change font size with control plus mouse. Right? Apply that, and then just, I think you have to apply.
Now we need to attach a mouse or what?
No, you can do it with control and surface thing.
Doesn't work.
You need to apply, not click OK.
Ah. No, it's there.
Nee, click en dan klik ik.
Huh?
You hit cancel instead of OK.
Yeah, because it's already there. Yeah. David, this is the man. Good. Thank you. So.
It's easy to make people happy.
So now everybody can see it?
Yeah.
Good. So basically, the class loader knows when a class comes, which has the first part a vendor and then component and so on with a couple of sub namespaces, it automatically detects and points to the folder of the component in the backend if you have that part. And all what is coming after administrator is then should be found in that folder. So because of that, as I didn't put controller here, he expected that the display controller is here in the root folder and not in the controller folder. And now as soon as I put in the controller name, it should now find the controller and display another error. What this now tries to do, it is now to load the view, which actually doesn't exist till now, but that's we are going to change. As I said in the slides, we need to define then. I don't know. That comes afterwards, but like that, it knows now how to load the display controller, and with that we can then migrate all the views. So actually already the first part is done. So we created the dispatcher file and namespace the display controller, and for the list view what we have to do now is to define a default view in the display controller, namespace the weblinks list controller and the model view, and then also changing the template files, and then the list view of weblinks should be migrated to Joomla 4 and loaded in our website. So first thing is we're going to create the folders we need. The model folder and the view folder. We have here in controllers, we have here the weblinks controller. That's the controller for the list view. We're moving that to the namespace. We can now remove all this redundant code. Add here controller. As I said, the old legacy classes should still work. So we are adding a backslash in front of it because they are now in the root namespace. I'm now a bit lazy. Copy the old namespace or the namespace from the display controller to the new weblinks list controller. I rename the file, and basically now we're done. We have here the module that's still the old setup. We need to change that. I want to say when the controller needs a model, that it should load the administrator model per default, and like that, for the weblinks list controller, we're good to go. We have a list model, that's the one weblinks. We're moving that again to the model folder. Yeah, Peter?
Why do you put the namespace declaration above the exec check?
Because namespace declaration needs to be on the first statement in a PHP file, if it's a namespace. I guess I still have it. I don't know. You see, it will be a lot of copy-paste stuff. That's why we make all Joomla 3 extension compatible in Joomla 4, that we'll have enough time till the end of Joomla 4 to migrate your extension. I need to give it the new name, model, and we can remove all this redundant code, give it a proper name, weblinks model, and then what is now the monkey work I was talking before, we need to add a backslash before every class declaration. That's because it's namespaced, and in namespaces every class usage needs to start with a backslash. Basically, that's for now, that's it. So we made the model. We need to change the file name. The file name needs now to be exactly the same as the class name. For the class loader to look up the class. Then we are starting to move the view. That's the view file. It becomes a new view, what it actually does. We call that HTML view. Again, need the namespace. Change it here to view.
No subdirectory?
Yeah.
What?
No subdirectory for the view?
Weblink and weblinks.
Ah, yeah, for sure. I plan to do that afterwards. We add the backslashes in front of every class. Hopefully there will be some tools which help you transforming your extension. Me and Tuan, the guy from Joomla Nation, he did most of the components. We did all of them by hand, adding the backslashes and stuff like that. I guess we did all of them now here. A J error. We need to create a subfolder.
The error is deprecated, right?
Yeah.
So it should work.
It's still, the pull request didn't get merged. Huh? The removal of J error. It's deprecated. We're not in discussion if it gets removed or not, but yeah. We're renaming the file.
Since 1.5.
Yeah, some 1.7, I guess.
J error itself is not too bad, but it's the get error method from J2 and stuff.
So basically now, could everybody follow that? Are there questions to moving the model, the views, the controller to namespaces?
Also, instead of adding the backlash to JText, the new method is just text.
It's text, yeah. If in the namespace, Joomla CMS language.
Okay, so you need to add that namespace too.
Yeah, you can, for example, I guess we have that here somewhere. Somewhere. You can remove that, just write text, and then
you need to use the namespace, the new namespace.
yeah, when you then press Control space, you see here that's namespace in Joomla CMS language. It's the file is there when you're using.
You need to put the use statement on top.
Exactly. PHP Storm is doing that. Helps on that. Is doing that automatically. So you see it here. When you have this use statement, you don't have always to write the full class name when you're in your PHP code. You can just use the class name itself without the namespace, and it knows then if that class is used, it knows then according to the use statements if it really should use that. So, there is one more thing which is missing. we have here in the display controller, we need to define here the default view. I do that by copying from content. Yeah, because otherwise it's always a little bit, yeah, I don't know, all the class properties out of the name, out of the box. We give him the name, the display controller, the default view, and now
yeah, you didn't add the template.
Basically, it should work like that. It should work with the old name. Weblinks model. Model, Weblinks model. I'm still now moving them to the old folder, but I wanted to show that it should work also with to the new folder. It should also work with the old one. Ah, yeah, for sure, it's the namespace. Yeah, we have the list view migrated to namespaces. So we can do the same game now with the form view. We start with I started always with the controller. I moved it. Gave it another name. Then going to the model. That's a slightly bigger one. I did that presentation before, so I have a branch with it. So I'm copied with that branch. All I can do is now copy it from here to there, and then we basically should be good to go. So what I did, I added the backslash here to every class. Every class, nothing more. Then moving the view, creating here the folder. I compare it with the Joomla 4 branch to copy all of that. It's again here with the toolbar helpers to add backslash in front of it, with the rest, giving it the namespace, using the base or the HTML view from the libraries. And now we leave that temple folder, and we should be able now to, when everything is correct, to edit now like such a web link. Controller, probably again, we didn't rename it. The table is missing. We have here now the table. You see, it's not anymore possible to use in your component not namespace the namespace classes. If you say you want to migrate it, then you need to migrate all of them. Again, the name must be the same. Copy all of it to the table. It will be a little bit faster, and now it should load. And give it a name, another name, and then save and close. And it has the new name.
What did you do with JForms? You just left it where they were?
Yeah, I come to that then afterwards, to how to move it to the new position. The same we can do now for the front end. There applies the same, but I leave it now. It's not so. Guess it's not so entertaining to watch me how I add backslashes in front of classes, but it basically should give you the idea what happens with the whole namespace thing. Are there questions to that? So is the concept more or less clear? What will come then onto you in Joomla 4? What do you mean with override? Like class override?
I need to change something in a core, but for specific project. So may I just override? Because of the next update can remove if I change it in a core. It will do. Override again.
Yeah, the question is, the question was how to override then core model classes, or was it the library classes?
Or override or extend or something.
Yeah, for example, we had with JForm, there was like, you made JForm get instance to get a form, and that's now something which comes through the DI container, so it's like not anymore this static call. You need to get the container, and out of the container then the form factory, and through the form factory the form. And that's then something which you can overload in the container, that service. It sounds a little bit cryptical, but hopefully we will then make proper documentation out of it. So basically you can then the target should be to overload that services, not anymore to do class overloading. Was that your question, or?
Let's maybe get controller, for example.
Yeah.
Some of the controller, Weblinks controller.
Yeah.
May I do some changes? No, I mean override, load my own controller instead of core.
Yeah, stuff like that can still be done through class overloading. You need to make a system plugin for that, and then
maybe the system, maybe something else. Maybe like a JLayout, for example, I can create a new file in some specific folder, and this file will be loaded instead of controller from Compatibility.
yeah, we honestly I want to get basically rid of class overloading. We should do more through services and work with interfaces, because the problem is when we add a new function to a class and you're overloading that, and we're adding a new function in a minor release, your extension will crash when you're overloading the class.
So might be we can extend like we do with any other classes. So we have some, for example, I see article controller, yes, maybe create some more I don't know. For example, I created some system plugin for Joomla 3 to extend every class inside Joomla core. So it analyzes PHP file, find class name, add some prefix and suffix, and use exact PHP function to run a new changed PHP file with new class name. So afterwards I can use standard name, for example, the same article controller in my own PHP file, and extend file which I pulled like.
That should be still possible. I thought.
Might be some Joomla 4 has some mechanism to do it easy.
The problem is there is.
Layout, or I don't know.
Yeah. The problem is with class hierarchy, you can't. If you want to overload the class, you need to create the class with the same class name. But is it okay when we look on that after the presentation? Because I want to show also some other stuff. Is it okay? We did the form view already. There is another thing that in the new Joomla backend template we are using actually Bootstrap 4. So as you have seen, the layout files they display, but not 100% correct. So mainly, if you're using the standard Joomla layouts for the backend, mainly what you have to do is to replace row fluid with row and span 5 with col md5 or whatever. If you're using more in-depth Bootstrap 2 commands in your CSS classes, you probably have to do then some magic to load on Joomla 3 one layout file and on Joomla 4 the other. So we're going to do that as well. As already pointed out, we have a new temple structure. So you have in your Joomla component, you have a temple folder with the view and they're inside the different layout files. So all I'm going to do here is changing here span 2 to call MD.
You can do that with search and replace.
Yeah, it's only. Yeah, the problem is with spans. There are spans the tag. So yeah, the other thing is adding a div here with a row. That defines that. And then now the list layout, which now shows on the sidebar the links, they should be now rendered beside the list. So hit F5. They're now here. The problem is because it's not, I have some space to improve the mobile experience. But anyway, it shows it on the left-hand side, and then now it uses the Bootstrap 4 classes. Same can be done with the form view. So basically you have then to migrate all of that to Bootstrap 4. As I said, you can move the XML forms to the top folder. There's also support for fields, that they are got namespaced. You need to put them in the field folder. And as I also already said, the same applies for the front end, what I did now for the back end. Good, from my side it was it. Are there questions? Was it understandable? The blog post is not published yet, but I will then after the presentation I will publish it.
Thank you.
Good.